I spend my days hunting for the thing that's wrong inside a wall. A house can look perfect. Lights come on, outlets work, and somewhere behind the drywall a connection is loose, arcing in the dark, warming a little more every night, charring the wood around it. Nobody smells it yet. Nobody sees the smoke, but it's there, and it's getting hotter. And one ordinary morning it lights the whole house up. I found out my wife had been on fire behind the wall for more than a year. And the strange part, the part I still turn over at night, is that I didn't go looking for it. I didn't need a private eye or a hidden camera or a second phone in a drawer. The truth came and found me. It rang my phone on a Tuesday afternoon while I was on my knees in a crawl space. And it was a woman I had never met. And she said she was sorry, and then she told me anyway. Stay with me, because what that stranger handed me is the only reason I still have my house, my work van, and my kids under my own roof. Two wronged people who had never met each other turned out to be holding two halves of the same picture. Where are you listening from tonight? I'd like to know who's out there. Stick around to the end and you'll hear what we did with those two halves once we put them together. My name's Wade. I'm 46. I'm a master electrician outside of Lynchburg, Virginia. And I've been wiring houses and small shops in this county since I was 19 years old. I run a two-man operation, me and a young apprentice named Lonnie. One van, my name on the side of it. I was married to Paige for 14 years. We have two kids, a boy named Eli who's 9 and a girl named Macy who's 6. I'm going to tell you exactly how a man who can find a fault in a wall he can't even see missed the one that was burning in his own kitchen. And I'm going to tell you how I put the power back where it belonged. Let me start with the trust, because without it, none of the rest of this makes sense. I was a good provider. I say that plain, not to brag, because being the provider is the whole shape of how this happened. I left the house before 6 most mornings. Electricians don't keep bankers' hours. When a storm comes through and half the county loses power, the phone starts ringing and you go. Because a family with a freezer full of food and a baby in the house doesn't care that it's your anniversary. That winter, we'd had an ice storm that put people in the dark for the better part of a week. And I worked it. I worked it the way my daddy taught me to work. Like the lights coming back on was a promise I'd personally made to every porch on the road. On top of the storm work, I'd landed the biggest contract of my life that year. A developer was putting up a row of small commercial units off the bypass, and he hired me to wire all of them. It was good money. It was the money that was going to redo our kitchen and put something real into the kids' college accounts. So I took it. And it meant late nights, and it meant Saturdays, and it meant I was tired in a way where you come home and you're a body on a couch more than you're a husband. I told myself that was love. I told myself a man who provides like that has earned a little trust at home. And Paige, she'd say, "Go, baby. We're fine. We're proud of you." She'd pack me a lunch some mornings. She'd send me a picture of the kids in the bathtub. From where I stood on a ladder pulling wire at 9 o'clock at night, I had a good marriage and a good life and a reason for every bit of the tired. We'd built it from nothing, the two of us. We met when I was still a journeyman, when I drove a truck that needed a prayer to start in the cold and rented half a duplex with a kitchen the size of a closet. She used to ride along with me on Saturdays just to be near me, sit in the truck with a thermos of coffee while I ran a job, and on the way home we'd talk about the house we'd have one day, the kids, the porch. We got the house. A little brick ranch on 2 acres with a workshop out back I'd wired exactly the way I wanted it. We got the kids. I thought we were living the very thing we'd drawn up in that cold truck. I thought a man who keeps the promises he made at the start gets to relax into the rest of it. I was wrong about the relaxing. You don't get to relax, not on a panel, and not in a marriage. The day you decide it's safe to stop paying attention is the day it starts to come apart behind you. I'll tell you something I'm not proud of. Because you deserve the whole circuit, not just the parts that make me look good. About 3 years before any of this, there'd been a man, a guy from the gym she went to. She got real friendly with him for a few months, texting late into the night, lighting up when his name crossed her phone, going quiet and putting it away when I walked in. And I noticed, I'm not blind. I said something, careful, the way you'd ask about a smell you can't place. And she cried and said it was just a friendship, that I was being insecure and controlling, that after everything we'd built I should know her better than that. And I felt ashamed for asking. That's the trick of it. She made me the one who'd done something wrong by noticing. So I chose to believe her, because I wanted to. Because the alternative meant tearing into the wall, and I was too tired and too in love to want to know what was back there. I patched over it and I never inspected behind the patch again. You learn, in my trade, that the repair you don't inspect is the one that comes back to find you. A splice you wrapped in a hurry and shut up inside a wall will hold for years, quiet as you please, and then one cold night, it'll arc. I knew that better than I know my own name, and I forgot it in my own house, with my own wife, because forgetting was easier than the truth. I'll tell you something I'm not proud of. Because you deserve the whole circuit, not just the parts that make me look good. About 3 years before any of this, there'd been a man, a guy from the gym she went to. She got real friendly with him for a few months, texting late, lighting up when his name came across her phone. And I noticed. And I said something. And she cried and said it was just a friendship and I was being insecure. And I chose to believe her. I wanted to believe her. So I patched over it, and I never checked behind the patch again. You learn, in my trade, that the repair you don't inspect is the one that comes back on you. I forgot my own rule at home. The first real sign, the first thing that didn't read right, was small. It always is. Paige started going to a spin class, 3 nights a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday evening. This fitness studio over in the next town. She'd come home glowing, gym bag over her shoulder, and tell me about the instructor and the playlist. And I thought, good for her. A woman who's home with 2 kids all day deserves a thing that's hers. I'm the last man who's going to begrudge my wife 3 hours to herself when I'm gone half the week. But spin class doesn't explain everything. And the signs started stacking the way they do, each one with a clean little answer sitting right next to it. There was a gas station receipt I found in her car when I borrowed it. A station 40 minutes north of us, in a direction we have no reason to go. She said she'd taken a wrong turn coming back from her sister's. Fine. People take wrong turns. There was a new way she had with her phone. It used to lay face up on the counter, on the arm of the couch, anywhere. Now it lived face down. And there was a passcode on it where there'd never been one before. She said the kids kept getting into her photos and deleting things. Fine. Kids do that. There was the perfume. There were 2 new sets of the kind of thing a woman doesn't buy for a husband who comes home and falls asleep on the couch. She said she'd bought them for herself, to feel good. And didn't I want her to feel good? And I did. So I said nothing. There was a whole weekend, a girls' weekend, she called it, a couple of hours away with her friends. She came back sunburned and quiet, and she handled me a little too gently for a few days after. The way you handle something you've decided to break later. There was the money, too, though I didn't see it for what it was until later. Little withdrawals, 100 here, 200 there, cash, on a Tuesday or a Thursday. When I asked once, she said she'd been buying things for the kids and groceries were sky high, which was true enough that I let it go. And there was the other thing a man doesn't like to say out loud. The way the bedroom went cold and stayed cold. Months of it. And when I reached for her, she was tired, always tired. And I told myself we were both just worn down by the years and the work. I had a long answer ready for every single thing, because she handed me one with every single thing. The night that should have stopped me cold, the one I keep coming back to, was nothing. Eli, my boy, 9 years old, half asleep on the couch while I carried him to bed, mumbled something about a man, asked me, foggy, if Mr. Scott was coming to the cookout. I didn't know any Scott. I asked him who that was, and he was already gone, asleep on my shoulder. And in the morning, he didn't remember saying it. I told myself it was a kid's dream, a name off a cartoon. I want you to hold on to that name the way I should have. Scott. My own son said it to me months before a stranger did, and I tucked him in and turned off the light and let it go. Every single one of those things had an answer. That's how it works. A short doesn't trip the breaker every time. Sometimes it just heats up quietly and waits. I had a panel full of warm wires, and I kept telling myself the house smelled fine. I want you to remember the spin class, by the way. Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. We're going to come back to those 3 nights. Because somebody else was watching a calendar with the very same night circled on it, and she was about to call me. It was a Tuesday in March. I was under a house on a service call, on my back in the dirt of a crawl space, running a new line, and my phone buzzed in my shirt pocket. Number I didn't know, local area code. I almost let it ring out. I'm glad past anything that I didn't. The woman's voice was steady, but it was the kind of steady that costs you something to hold. She said, "Is this Wade Coleman?" I said it was. She said, "You don't know me. My name is Alison Mercer, and I think your wife and my husband have been seeing each other for about a year, and I have proof, and I didn't want to be the kind of person who knew and let you keep not knowing." I was lying in the dirt under a stranger's living room floor with a wire stripper still in my hand. I didn't say anything for a second. Then I asked her one question, because in my work, the first thing you do is confirm the fault before you start pulling things apart. I asked her, "What nights?" She said, "Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sunday evenings." I want to tell you I yelled. I want to tell you I crawled out of there and drove home and kicked the door in. I didn't. Something in me went very quiet and very organized. The way it does when I open a panel and find char marks. You don't react to char marks. You find the source. You cut the power. You fix it right. And you do not get yourself killed being angry at a live circuit. I climbed out of that crawl space. I sat in my van, and I asked Alison Mercer if she could meet me somewhere that wasn't either of our houses. Her husband's name was Scott. He ran a landscaping and lawn care outfit 2 towns over. Alison kept his books, every invoice, every card statement, every fuel receipt. Because that's how a small business survives, somebody minding the money. And about 2 months back, she'd started seeing charges that didn't fit a lawn care company. Hotels, a jeweler, dinners on nights he told her he was finishing a job, restaurant tabs for 2, in towns where he had no clients. She'd done what a bookkeeper does. She'd pulled the thread, and the thread led to a phone, and the phone led to a name, and the name was my wife's. We met at a coffee place off the highway where neither of us knew a soul. She brought a binder. Not a dramatic thing, just a fat 3-ring binder with a year of her husband's spending in it, organized by month, and a legal pad where she'd already started matching dates. And I sat across from a woman I'd never met in my life, both of us steady, both of us sick. And we laid our 2 calendars side by side. She was a small, plain-spoken woman, the kind who runs the part of a business that actually keeps it alive, while the man gets to drive the truck with his name on it. Her hands were steady on that binder, but I could see what it was costing her to keep them that way. We didn't cry. We didn't carry on. There's a particular calm that 2 betrayed people have when they meet. Like 2 people who survived the same wreck, comparing the same bruises. She slid the pages across to me one at a time and talked me through them in a flat, careful voice. The voice of a woman who'd already done all her falling apart, alone in a parked car somewhere, and had nothing left but the math. Her husband's late jobs, my wife's spin classes. They were the same nights, down to the evening. his hotel charges, and her sunburned getaway weekend lined up to the day. Where her gas receipt put her car, 40 minutes north, his fuel receipts put his truck the very same afternoon. The jeweler's charge on his card came 2 days before Paige showed up at my mother's birthday in a thin gold necklace I'd never bought her, that she said she'd found on sale. 2 people in 2 different houses who'd each been handed a believable story. And when you set the stories next to each other, they made one ugly, true thing. It was the cleanest fault trace I'd ever run, and it was my own life on the bench. I asked her how long she'd known before she called me. She said 2 weeks. She said she'd sat with it for 2 weeks, knowing there was a man somewhere with 2 kids who had no idea his life was on fire, and she couldn't stand to be a person who knew and stayed quiet. She'd found my name through the business, found my number, and dialed it from her own parked car with her hands shaking. I told her I'd be grateful to her for the rest of my life, and I meant it, and I still do. Here's what I knew about myself, sitting at that table. I'm not a man who can outshout anybody. I'm not built for a screaming match in a driveway with the neighbors watching. But give me a problem with a structure to it. Give me something I can diagram and trace and prove, and I will work it cold and careful until it's solved. So I made Alison a deal. Right there, over 2 coffees neither of us drank. We weren't going to confront them. Not yet. Confronting them was the dumbest thing 2 people in our spot could do. Because the second they knew we knew, the phones would get wiped. The stories would get straightened, and the money would get hidden. We were going to stay quiet, and we were going to be thorough, and we were going to do this by the book. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not the first name in the phone book, a woman in town named Patricia who'd been doing family law for 30 years and had a reputation for being calm and absolutely relentless. I sat in her office and I told her everything, flat, the way I'd report a job to an inspector. And she told me some things about Virginia that changed how I walked through my own house for the next 2 months. In Virginia, she said, adultery is still a fault ground for divorce. It's not just a sad fact you mention. It's a legal thing with teeth. But, she said, and this is the part that mattered, you cannot prove it on your word alone. Virginia requires corroboration. A spouse's testimony by itself isn't enough. You need it backed up, by records, by a witness, by something outside your own mouth. So a man who knows in his gut his wife is cheating, but only has a gut, has nothing. A man who has a year of matched financial records from the other spouse's own household, she said, has something a court will look at hard. She told me what adultery, properly proven, can do in Virginia. It can bar the cheating spouse from receiving spousal support. Paige worked part-time, cleaning teeth 2 days a week. For years, the plan, the thing she'd said out loud, was that if anything ever happened, she'd be taken care of. She'd get support, because I was the earner. Proven adultery, Patricia told me, can take that off the table entirely, except in cases of real hardship. And the marital money spent on the affair, the hotels, the jeweler, the dinners, that's waste. That's money taken from the marriage and burned on the affair. And a court can charge it back, can hand me a bigger share of what's left to make up for it. I asked her what made a case like mine strong or weak, because I wanted to know what I was building toward. She said the weak cases are the ones where a husband is sure but alone, all gut and no record, and the wife's lawyer just calls it jealousy and it goes nowhere. The strong cases, she said, are the ones with corroboration from outside the marriage, and what I was describing, a year of the other man's own financial records, kept and matched by the other man's own wife, was about as strong as corroboration gets. She told me the thing 2 wronged spouses almost never figure out in time, which is that each of us was the missing witness in the other's case. Alone, Alison had a husband with suspicious charges. Alone, I had a wife with suspicious nights. Together, we had a documented, dated, dollar and cents affair that no lawyer alive could wave off as a jealous imagination. Then she gave me the rules, and they were the same rules a good electrician follows on a live panel. Do not confront her. You'll only warn her. Do not move out of the house. In Virginia, that can be twisted into desertion and used against you. Do not touch the joint accounts or do anything cute with the money. The court hates that, and it makes you look like the bad guy. Do not vent to friends or post a word anywhere, because it gets back. Document everything, dates, times, what you see with your own eyes, and keep it somewhere she'll never find it. Get the proof solid before she ever knows you're looking. Cut the power before you touch the wire. Living in that house for those weeks was the hardest job I've ever worked. I came home every night to the woman who'd done this, and I kissed her on the cheek, and I asked about her day, and I played with my kids on the floor, and I kept my face the way you keep your hand steady on a hot line, because one twitch gets you killed. I'd go out to the workshop after they were all asleep, and that's where I kept the log, and that's where I let myself feel any of it, an hour at a time, before I shut the box and went back inside to be normal. I am not a good liar by nature. I learned to be one for 10 weeks because the truth required it. So that's what we did. Alison and me. For the next several weeks. She kept copying her husband's records, quietly, the way she'd always handled the books. Nothing that would tip him. I kept a log. I'm an organized man by trade, and it turns out that's a useful thing to be when your life requires evidence. And to satisfy that corroboration rule, Patricia brought in an investigator for exactly one job. Not to follow Paige around for weeks, just to be in a public parking lot on one Thursday evening and quietly confirm, with a timestamp, what the both of us already knew. That my wife's car and Scott Mercer's truck spent the evening at the same motel while she was supposedly at spin class. One clean, lawful sighting in a public place. That's all it takes to turn a gut feeling into corroboration. I have to tell you about the 2 weeks that almost undid me. Because I think it's the part of this that anybody who's been lied to will understand in their bones. Right in the middle of all that quiet documenting, Paige changed. I don't know if she sensed something or if it was guilt or if Scott had gotten cold feet. But for 2 weeks she became the wife I married. She cooked, she put her phone down, she planned a family trip to the mountains for the summer and got the kids all excited about it. She'd reach for my hand on the couch. She told me, one night, that she knew she'd been distant, that she wanted to do better, that she loved me. And I lay in bed next to her, with the evidence locked in a box out in my van, and I came so close to throwing it all in the river. I thought, maybe it's over. Maybe whatever it was burned itself out and I can just have my wife back and never make any of us live through the rest of this. It's the cruelest part, that good wife stretch. Because it works on the very decency that made you a good husband in the first place. I called Alison, sick to my stomach, half hoping she'd tell me she'd had the same change of heart, that maybe we'd both imagined the size of it. And Alison, God bless that steady woman, she said one thing to me that I've kept. She said, Wade, a man checking the gauges doesn't get to stop checking just because the needle moved back for a minute. Then she told me Scott had a conference coming up that weekend, out of town. The same weekend Paige had just mentioned a certification course for work. We laid the dates next to each other on the phone, and there it was again. The good wife 2 weeks wasn't the truth. It was the smoke clearing for a second, so I'd put down the extinguisher. Then we nearly lost the whole thing. Scott went looking for a fuel receipt in Alison's files for his taxes and noticed she'd been pulling statements he didn't remember asking about. He got suspicious of his own wife. For about a day and a half. Alison thought he was going to figure out she was building a case, and if he did, he'd warn Paige, and they'd both scrub everything clean. She called me near tears, not because she was scared of him, but because she thought we were about to lose the proof that set us free. I told her to do the one thing my trade has taught me about a job that's about to go sideways. Get everything that matters out and somewhere safe. Right now, tonight, before you do anything else. She copied every record she had to a drive and put it in a safe deposit box at the bank the next morning. The same morning. As it happened, that her husband decided to act normal and let it go. We had it. It was out of the wall and into a box where nobody could char it. After that, it was just patience. Patience and paperwork. The two hardest tools to hold when your whole body wants to swing a hammer. We coordinated it, the two of us, with our two lawyers talking. We weren't going to give them a chance to get clever. On the same week, Alison filed on Scott and I filed on Paige, both on the ground of adultery, both with corroboration that backed each other up. Her husband's records corroborated my wife's affair. My investigator's sighting corroborated her husband's. Two families that should never have had anything to do with each other turned out to be the witnesses that made each other's cases ironclad. A short circuit in two different houses, traced back to the same bad junction. Paige was served at home on an ordinary Wednesday. No scene, no screaming. A polite man knocked on the door and handed her an envelope and left. I wasn't even there. I was on a job, up a ladder, putting a porch light back on for a widow down the road, when my phone started lighting up with calls from a wife who suddenly, urgently, needed to talk. I let her talk, eventually. And she did what I think she'd planned to do all along if it ever came to this. She tried to flip it. She told her lawyer, and anyone who'd listen, that I was controlling, that I was never home, that I'd driven her to it by caring more about my work than about her. And for one bad week I was scared. Because a story like that can stick, and a man who works the hours I work can look guilty of neglect just by showing his time card. But here's what the records did. Patricia laid out the matched calendars, the financials, the dissipated money, the corroborated sighting, all of it. Against that, he worked too hard providing for us doesn't carry far. The adultery was proven to the standard Virginia asks for, clear and convincing, because it wasn't one wounded husband's word. It was a whole structure of evidence built by two households. Her claim for spousal support, the thing she'd counted on, was barred. The money she and Scott had burned, a little over $17,000 across that year, on hotels and a jeweler and dinners, was charged back as marital waste, and the split of what remained came out in my favor to account for it. I kept the house, I kept my van and my tools, the things that earn. The kids' time landed primarily with me, because when the court actually looked at who was at the pediatrician, who was at the school pickups on the days I could, who showed up, the picture didn't match the stories she'd told. And the cascade, the part where it all comes back around. Scott Mercer's marriage was over the same month mine was. Alison didn't just leave him. She left him with a forensic accounting of his own business that he could not argue with, because she was the one who'd kept the books all along. In a small trade like his, where your name on the side of the truck is the whole business, word travels. He lost customers. He lost the wife who'd quietly run the part of his company that actually worked. And the woman he'd burned his marriage down for, my wife. He dropped her inside of a month. The second it cost him something real. The second there was no hotel weekend and just the wreckage of two families and lawyers and child support, he was gone. The fire behind the wall is always so much smaller once you open it up to the light. It was never the grand thing they told themselves it was. It was mostly just two people lying to the people who trusted them. I won't pretend I walked away clean and proud and undamaged. There was a night, after the kids were asleep, that I sat out in the workshop with all those records spread across the bench, the proof of everything. And I cried, for the first time in, I don't know how many years. Not for her, for the man I'd been 3 years earlier, the one who patched over the first warning and never inspected behind it. For Eli and Macy, who didn't ask for any of this, and who I now had to be both parents to. And, if I'm honest, for the marriage I thought I had, which it turned out I'd stopped maintaining a long time before she ever found Scott Mercer. Because here is what I had to own. I spend my whole working life telling people that a connection you stop checking is a connection that fails. I knew that. I built a career on it. And I let the connection at home go untended for years because I told myself that providing was the same as loving, that the hours were the gift. A wire can be carrying current and still be coming loose. A marriage can look lit up and still be arcing in the dark. I'm not saying her choices were my fault. They were hers, and she made them. 3 nights a week, for over a year. And she pulled our kids' future into a motel with her. But I stopped checking the panel at home, and a man in my trade knows better. Alison and I are friends now. The strange, clean friendship of 2 people who stood in the same fire and didn't burn the other one. We don't talk much, but once in a while she'll text me a picture of her kids doing something good, and I'll send back one of mine, and neither of us has to explain anything to the other. We were the 2 halves of the same picture. We were each other's corroboration, in court and out of it. So that's the story. A stranger called me in a crawl space, and instead of breaking me, she handed me the one thing that saved me, the truth, with the receipts to back it up. I didn't win because I was angrier or louder or crueler than they were. I won because I treated my own life the way I treat a dangerous panel. I found the fault before I touched it. I cut the power. I got proof before I made a move. And I fixed it right, so it wouldn't come back on me or my kids. If you take one thing from a tired electrician tonight, take this. The bad connection never announces itself. It hides behind the wall, in the dark, warming a little more every night. And it will tell you the house smells just fine, right up until the morning it burns. So check the things you love while they're still cool enough to touch. Don't wait for the smoke. I've still got the same name on the side of the same van. I've still got my kids and my house and my Saturdays back. The mountains trip we never took with their mother. Eli and Macy and I took it ourselves last summer. Just the 3 of us. And it was quiet. And it was good. Tell me where you're listening from tonight. And tell me this, if a stranger called you with the truth, would you have the steadiness to set down the hammer and pick up the binder? I think more of you would than you know. Take care of the wiring at home. It's the only circuit that really matters.